What's up, guys? I'm Derek with Bird's Eye View Media, and a few of you guys have asked Jay and me to do the best movies of 2016. So, because Jay and I have seen a different list of movies, we're going to each make a video separately. So, before I begin, each of these movies is somewhat in an order by how much I liked them, but the list is very tentative because some of these movies I've seen multiple times, and for others, I've only seen them once. So the list is subject to change. Also, full disclosure before I begin and before people get mad that I left a certain film off, there are a couple films that I have yet to see, and examples of those films are Moonlight and Silence. I really want to see both of these movies, but I have not yet had the chance. So I have 8 top movies of 2016. So the very first movie I'm including in the number 8 spot is Live by Night. This movie kind of split people. A lot of critics thought it was too jumbled. Some people, it wasn't what they expected. Ben Affleck directed it and starred in it. And lately, that has been a really winning formula. I mean, he made The Town and Argo. And admittedly, Live by Night is not quite up to those standards. But I do think that it was a very entertaining movie. I thought it was very deep. A lot of the criticisms that it's getting are a little bit overzealous. One thing I can definitely tell you upon watching it is it does seem like certain parts of the movie were cut. It's just the type of movie that you can feel like some bridge scenes were most likely taken out of the movie. And I'm hoping that by the time it gets released on DVD, that we will see some very important scenes added back in the tradition of the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman, for example. But overall, I thought that Live by Night was an epic. It starts the movie up in New England, where he's running the alcohol prohibition era. Then he ends up going down to Florida, building an empire down there, clashing with additional empires. It was pretty interesting to watch. It was a violent movie, but it had dialogue mixed in that I feel like really built the characters. There's one scene where Ben Affleck is in the cafe with a very important religious young girl figure in the community, and just the conversation they have in that scene, it reminded me almost of a Tarantino-style scene, a very deep philosophical conversation, and it really added to the quality of the movie. Overall, I think the rating that this movie was given on IMDb is far too low, and I think this movie will get even better when we see all of these scenes that were inevitably taken out of the film. My next film is Rogue One. This might surprise some of you because I'm really not that big of a Star Wars fan. I like Star Wars, but I would never be lining up on opening night to go see it. The universe is interesting, but even with The Force Awakens, I felt like it was far too similar to Episode 4. It just didn't do that much for me. But Rogue One actually really pulled me in. I really liked just seeing normal people struggle in the world that Star Wars has built. I like seeing people who don't have ridiculous powers. I liked seeing them struggle against a very ridiculously powerful adversary. And honestly, something as simple as seeing Darth Vader from a commoner's perspective is amazing. That's something I feel like you don't fully appreciate in the original trilogy. The end scene where Darth Vader gets on the ship and just absolutely levels dozens of people is just incredible. He's such a looming figure, and I found all of the characters in Rogue One to be far more believable than The Force Awakens. I liked the fact that they didn't lean heavily on the whole Jedi mythology. It was a very fresh take on a franchise I feel like is becoming oversaturated. So with that being said, I thought it was very entertaining, one of the best blockbusters of 2016, and absolutely I liked it more than The Force Awakens. This next movie will not surprise anyone if they're subscribed to this channel, and I'm not going to talk about it that much because I've already made probably 6 videos on this subject, and my next pick is Batman v Superman. I liked it far more than Civil War, I liked it more than Deadpool, I liked it more than any other superhero movie that came out in 2016. I loved the dark, gritty tone. I thought the reimaginings of characters were actually good. Yes, I'm including Lex Luthor in that. I thought it vastly outperformed the disappointment of Suicide Squad to me. There's an entire film defense for this movie on this channel, so if you have not yet watched it and you're wondering why the hell I picked this movie when so many people are against it, just go ahead, click the channel, you'll see a whole playlist. You can see all my thoughts on Batman v Superman. Again, another pick that received split critical reception. The next film Jay and I have already talked about a bit, and that is The Nice Guys. The Nice Guys, the chemistry between Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, I thought was incredible. It was a pair we never would have expected to perform that well, but it just worked. The plot, it was good, but it was mainly just the interaction of these two characters that made it excellent. The movie was very, very funny. It had good action, and I just want to see more of these two guys stumble through these types of problems as private investigators. Me and Jay, we talk about this at length in a video I will pop up on the screen. Very nice surprise of 2016, and I feel like it was very underappreciated. Speaking of underappreciated, my next pick is 10 Cloverfield Lane. 10 Cloverfield Lane came out early in 2016, and it was a movie I ended up going to just because it looked vaguely interesting, and it ended up being one of my favorite movies of the year. 10 Cloverfield Lane is basically a single-setting movie, which I'm a big fan of. It actually sort of reminded me of something like The Hateful Eight. I mean, obviously not quite that good, but John Goodman's interaction with the protagonist who really doesn't know if he's telling the truth or if he's just living out a weird, sick fantasy creates an amazing dynamic. She has a lot of suspicion. She doesn't know what to think. There are a few incredibly high tension scenes. One is in the trailer where a lady is trying to get into their bunker and he's screaming at her not to let her in. And it's so intense. You can see how much she is struggling because she doesn't know if she should trust this guy or if she should save this person's life who's trapped out there. She doesn't even know if there's real danger outside of the bunker. There's a third character who adds a very interesting dynamic. We don't know if it's a love triangle. We don't know who to trust. We don't even know if this apocalypse is real. He could just be a doomsday prepper. There's so many questions, and that leads to so many scenes of tension. You can feel how uncomfortable the characters are. You can feel them having inner struggles with each other. It's an amazing movie. It's a great, great sleeper hit, and I feel like it got vastly overlooked. Number 3, unlike the past entries, is on pretty much everybody's list of best movies of 2016, and that is Arrival. Arrival is interesting because I'm usually not that into sci-fi movies. I usually skip them and wait till they come out on DVD, but Arrival had a lot of people behind it that I really, really liked. Amy Adams is one of my favorite actresses. I think Jeremy Renner can do very good work. And the plot was very unique. We basically watched a movie about a linguist trying to communicate with aliens that don't speak English, and we watch her just basically come up with symbols, come up with motions to try to have it make sense to these aliens, and just explaining that makes it sound really boring. But when you actually watch the movie, you get to see how Amy Adams thinks about it. You get to see how she tries to solve this very complicated puzzle. And it's not only that she's trying to communicate with them, but it's also raising a lot of philosophical questions like, why are they here? What is their purpose? Do they mean us harm? And we see a lot of minor characters struggle with these beliefs. We see the military try to attack the aliens, and then we end up, this part's a bit of a spoiler, but we end up with this big philosophy about time and how there's a whole nother dimension, and the movie goes from very complicated linguistics to very complicated philosophy. And it actually took me quite some thinking after I finished watching the movie to fully grasp what kinds of questions were even being considered. The movie is beautifully shot, and Amy Adams is great as always. Definitely a solid top 3 of 2016. Number 2, I feel like did have a decent amount of hype going in, but when it came out, the hype kind of dissipated, and it is Nocturnal Animals. Jake Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors. I think that his film selection, especially lately, has been very, very good, and Amy Adams comes up yet again on this list. And Nocturnal Animals is formatted very interestingly. Basically, you have a current day storyline with Amy Adams, who used to be married to Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and she's a big, supervisor in the fashion world, but she's living kind of a hollow life. She's struggling with insomnia, and everything feels empty to her, and she does a very good job of conveying how empty everything she's doing is. And we kind of feel for her. We feel for that stagnation. At the same time, Jake Gyllenhaal, her ex-husband, mails her a first copy of a book he's about to release, which shockingly has a lot to do with their relationship in a very metaphorical form. So basically, the movie ends up having a modern-day storyline with Amy Adams' very isolated struggle, where she's just going through life, and then we have a storyline which is the book realized, which Jake Gyllenhaal is the main character of. There are a lot of really, really interesting parallels in themes. Amy Adams' stagnant life is following a very similar theme that this very aggressive and very heartbreaking, gruesome story is. The story that Jake Gyllenhaal is the main character of, the book story, feels very similar for whatever reason to the first season of True Detective for me. It's very raw. It takes place in a southern environment, and it features 2 very deep main characters. And speaking of those main characters, Michael Shannon is playing the opposite of Jake Gyllenhaal, and he actually steals the movie from Gyllenhaal. Michael Shannon's character is very, very deep, very dynamic, very interesting. We don't really learn that much about him when we first meet him, but he continues to get deeper and deeper. He has all these inner demons going on. He starts offering these very questionable moral decisions, and Jake Gyllenhaal's character is very realistic. It's someone who's overcome by these horrible events that have happened to him and his family, and he's kind of getting overpowered by the situation. And watching how different he is from Michael Shannon creates a great dynamic. I think this movie was criminally overlooked after it was released, and it is my second favorite of the year. And my number 1 pick for 2016 is Hacksaw Ridge. Hacksaw Ridge stars Andrew Garfield and actually features a really good performance from Vince Vaughn and Sam Worthington, and it was directed by Mel Gibson, who's actually been kind of disappeared in the film scene for quite some time. This movie, in my opinion, is our modern-day Saving Private Ryan. I went into it expecting a decent war movie, but I wasn't expecting anything I would love. I thought the conscientious objector thing might end up getting a little preachy. I just was kind of on the fence about how I felt about the main character. He makes his decisions out of a religious interpretation, and it's done very tastefully. It provides a really cool perspective into World War II. It's a story that we've never seen in film before, but we've never seen someone really want to serve their country, yet refuse to kill in a war, which is kind of the central thing you think about in war. And a big difference between this and Saving Private Ryan is that this movie is a little bit more of a biopic. We spend a lot of time seeing him in boot camp. We see him struggle with his philosophy. We see other people discriminate him because of his philosophy. And then we get to the battle. And the battle is very reminiscent of the D-Day scene in Saving Private Ryan. It's very raw, very quick, very real, very bloody, and it's amazing. We feel the gravity of the danger. We see the struggle he goes in emotionally building up to the battle, and then we see the physical struggle that goes on during the battle. Every character is awesome. Vince Vaughn was actually one of my favorite actors in this movie because we see him struggle as well with this cadet. We see him decide if he should back this guy or if he should just push this guy out of the military. And then we see him evolve to really, really respecting him during the battle, and we see the whole army as a whole evolve. The movie is incredible. The themes are very strong. It is shot beautifully. It reminds you of Saving Private Ryan in so many different ways. And one small detail that I really, really appreciated at the end of the movie is they show the actual people that the movie is about. We see interviews with them and they explain how they were thinking, and it adds so much gravity. It reminds you that this is a real story, and it reminds you about what they did and how important it was. So those are my top 8 of 2016. Let me know if I left any movie you really liked out, if you agree with my quick analyses. And if you guys want to hear more about any one of these except Batman v Superman, which I already did, I'm more than willing to do a long analysis about them. So on the off chance you actually made it this far in the video, leave a comment, and yeah, consider subscribing.